The auction house was a place Carter Hayes had avoided for years. It wasn't the kind of place you went unless you had no other choice. The air was thick with the smell of hay, sweat, and desperation. Ranchers shuffled about, their boots scuffing against the concrete floors. They eyed livestock in pens, calculating their worth in feed and labor. Carter leaned against the back wall, his arms crossed over his chest, silently observing the chaos. He didn't know why he'd come. His ranch was fully stocked, and he didn't need anything. But something about the flyer he'd seen at the post office had drawn him here. He watched as horses were paraded through the ring, followed by goats and sheep. The auctioneer's voice boomed over the speakers, rattling off numbers faster than Carter could follow. He was about to leave when something caught his attention. A dog. The German Shepherd was led into the ring on a frayed rope leash. He didn't walk so much as stumble, his legs trembling beneath him. His coat was patchy and dull, with scars crisscrossing his body like battle wounds. His ribs jutted out sharply beneath his skin, and his eyes... Carter couldn't look away from those eyes. They were dark and hollow, staring blankly at the ground as if life itself had abandoned him. "Lot 47, the auctioneer called out. "Military dog, 5 years old, no papers, no training record. Current bid stands at nothing." Laughter rippled through the crowd. $50 for that thing? Someone jeered. "He looks like he's already halfway to the grave," another voice added. Carter felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd seen that look before, in soldiers who'd returned from war zones broken in ways no one could see. In himself during those long nights when silence screamed louder than any battlefield ever could. This dog wasn't just broken. He was discarded, forgotten. The auctioneer tapped his gavel impatiently. "Come on now, who'll start me off at $50? No one moved. Carter stepped forward before he even realized what he was doing. "I'll take him," he said firmly. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into murmurs. "50? Asked the auctioneer. "20, Carter replied flatly. More laughter erupted around him. "Ain't worth 20 cents, someone muttered under their breath. 20, Carter repeated, his voice steady and unwavering. The auctioneer hesitated but eventually brought down his gavel with a sharp bang. "Sold! $20 to the gentleman in the back." Carter ignored the stares as he walked toward the ring. The dog didn't lift his head or even twitch an ear at the sound of footsteps approaching him. He just lay there, like something discarded too many times to care anymore. Crouching down beside him, Carter spoke softly. "You okay now, buddy? Name's Carter Hayes. Let's get you out of here." The dog didn't react, didn't flinch or blink, but Carter wasn't deterred. He'd seen this kind of hopelessness before, and he knew it couldn't be rushed or forced. Lisa Grady, one of the shelter managers overseeing the auction, approached with a clipboard in hand. Her expression was a mix of relief and guilt as she handed Carter some paperwork to sign. "We've been calling him Ranger," she said quietly when Carter asked about the dog's name. "He came from some military program, at least that's what we were told. But we don't have any records on him, no one wanted him, and honestly, I don't blame him." Carter frowned but said nothing as he signed the liability waiver Lisa handed him. She hesitated before adding, "I don't want to discourage you, but dogs like him don't usually bounce back." Carter glanced down at Ranger again, at his scarred body and lifeless eyes, and felt a pang of recognition deep inside him. "Neither do guys like me," he murmured under his breath before standing up and leading Ranger out of the ring. The drive back to Hayes Ranch was quiet except for the hum of Carter's old Ford truck and the occasional rattle of Ranger's crate in the back seat. The Shepherd lay curled up inside it, tense despite Carter leaving its door unlatched as a gesture of trust. Every bump in the gravel road made Ranger flinch, as though expecting blows that never came. When they arrived at Hayes Ranch, a sprawling 200-acre property nestled beneath Montana's wide-open skies streaked with golden-violet dusk, Carter parked near his cabin and opened Ranger's crate door carefully. "This is home now," he said softly while squatting beside it. "No cages, no chains. Just you and me." Ranger didn't move. His paws stayed glued to the crate floor. "I'm not going to drag you out," Carter added calmly while sitting down on gravel beside him. "You've had enough of that already." Minutes stretched into hours as Carter waited patiently without forcing contact. A quiet presence giving Ranger space to decide whether safety was possible here. "You know," Carter began after some time passed under Montana's fading sunlight, "I wasn't supposed to be here either. Got out thinking I could handle quiet. Turns out quiet's louder than gunfire sometimes." Ranger shifted slightly, a paw inching forward tentatively but stopping short of full trust. "You're not broken," Carter murmured gently after noticing this small movement between them. "Neither am I." The days that followed were slow but steady steps toward healing, for both man and dog alike. At first, Ranger barely left his corner of the barn where Carter had set up a soft bed for him. He flinched at sudden movements and loud noises, retreating into himself whenever Carter got too close. But Carter never pushed. He simply sat nearby, talking softly about nothing in particular, stories from his time in the Marines, memories of growing up on this very ranch, until eventually Ranger began to relax in his presence. The breakthrough came one crisp autumn morning when Carter was working on repairing a section of fencing near the barn. He heard a soft rustling behind him and turned to see Ranger standing a few feet away, watching him intently with those dark eyes that no longer seemed quite so hollow. "Hey there," Carter said gently, setting down his tools and crouching low to make himself less intimidating. "You checking up on me?" Ranger took a hesitant step forward and then another, until finally he was close enough for Carter to reach out and scratch behind his ears. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. A crack in the wall Ranger had built around himself. From that day on, things began to change quickly. Ranger started following Carter around the ranch, sticking close by his side as if afraid to lose sight of him. He still had moments of fear, flinching at loud noises or freezing when strangers approached. But with each passing day, he grew braver. One night during a storm, Ranger proved just how far he'd come and how much more he still had to give. A flash flood swept through part of the ranch after heavy rains caused a nearby creek to overflow its banks. In the chaos of trying to secure livestock and prevent damage to buildings, Carter slipped on wet ground and twisted his ankle badly enough that he couldn't stand. As water rose around them and panic set in among the animals trapped in pens nearby, it was Ranger who sprang into action without hesitation, barking loudly to alert others before dragging a rope over to Carter so he could pull himself upright using nearby fencing for support.